Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is mental wellness. And the conversation around mental wellness, I'm going to be talking about how we engage in conversation when it comes to those crucial confrontations that take place when it's time to hold someone accountable without cutting them down for size, without dehumanizing them. And I think that we just need to do more work in focusing on making sure that when we see behavior that we don't like, when we're holding people accountable for behavior that we don't like, we don't automatically just peg that person as like a disgusting human being or walk away wanting to deliver that message as the goal. I think the goal is really helping someone understand like this is the consequence of your behavior, of this pattern of behavior, as is the focus of this video. And as a result of that, like I hope you grow, I hope you learn with or without me, but keeping their humanity intact. I think that is something that we need to take more seriously. Like when I think about the state of the world, when I think about like just how easy it is for us to dehumanize each other and how that's escalated into a lot of like the horrible things that are taking place around the world. Like we think about Palestine, when I think about Sudan, I think about like it's just history repeating itself, right? It's just colonialism. It's just finding territory that, you know, a certain group of individuals want, claiming that territory for themselves, but then recognizing that they need to like remove the people who were originally part of that territory in order to occupy it. And isn't that the history of Africa? Isn't that the history of North and South America? I mean, it's just history repeating itself. It's just demonizing the people who represent a barrier to what it is that another individual wants. And so this is just a cycle that I feel is perpetuated by othering each other, by seeing the differences that we each hold as a reason to be contemptuous towards each other. And I think that when we do more work behind recognizing that our humanity is a mosaic, it's a cultural fabric that is connected. It's like a quilt, a patchwork of quilt that connects each and every one of us, regardless of creed, nationality, regardless of race, which I think is a human construct, so like we're not going to get into that, regardless of gender, regardless of religion, regardless of beliefs. Like I think that ultimately, like how I operate in the world around me is I recognize like this is a shared human experience, and you're on your journey, I'm on my journey. Our journeys have interconnected for some reason, but if there is a conversation that I need to have with you, and out of that conversation there is a consequence that is to be doled out, I'm going to hold your humanity intact. I'm not going to ever allow myself to engage in a discussion where my goal is to rip your humanity down to size. And like I am not someone who has always been this evolved. Like if you met the teenage version of me, like my focus really was on cutting down the people who cut me down. This is a byproduct of my own healing journey, of my own growth and development, of my own understanding that I can really dislike what someone has done, and as a byproduct of that decide that person themselves is not my human being. Like they're not the kind of person I want to spend more time with, but I'm never going to allow myself to feel like that gives me permission to want to destroy that person, whether that's destroy them emotionally, mentally, physically. Like, and I think very few of us would actually go out of our way to try to destroy someone physically, but like I see what that kind of behavior does to people, right? And I've having personally been stalked for years, right? Like this wasn't something that took place over a short span of time. It's been years and it's escalated in so many different ways. I recognize what happens when we dehumanize each other, when we objectify each other, when we commoditize each other, when we see each other from a lens that is just not a human to human lens. And so I am all the more adamant in putting this message out there and recognizing that like we can hold people accountable, but I think that it's our job, it is our duty to also hold space for their humanity. As it's evolving, as it's growing, I don't think anyone is beyond redemption, but I think the people who think they are the people who behave the most recklessly. So they're the people who need the most empathy, the most compassion, the most consideration, even as we hold them accountable without leniency. I think it's the way that we engage and interact that really enables someone to remind them maybe even that they're still human too, right? They may think that there's something other than human for the things that they've allowed themselves to do. I mean, I don't think anyone does wrong in this life without feeling torment for it. And maybe that's just my own naivety. I can be naive in certain respects, but I think that the things that you do in this life will hurt you or help you. And there's nothing that you do where you're just kind of scotch-free, right? Like, is this going to come back to you? I'm like a huge believer of karma in that sense. But I think that how we help people like break the cycles that they themselves are in are by holding space for their humanity. So in this conversation, in the last conversation, I focused about content, and I focused on how we can just focus on the content, not focus on ripping the person down. But here we're talking about like patterns of behavior. Someone who's doing something over and over and over again, and you've given them chance after chance after chance, and now it's time to hold them accountable to the pattern of behavior. And I think that the one thing that I've recognized in my life, that patterns of behavior have very little to do with us, and it feels personal. It feels like a personal attack. But someone repeatedly going over the same kinds of behaviors that are toxic, that are destructive, that are not helpful, that are harmful, that are hurtful, like that's their own struggle. And when people bleed, they bleed on the people around them, right? So a lot of the times the villains in our stories are people who are themselves going through a hard time, trying to break out of cycles of behaviors that are not serving them. And so I think that these kinds of conversations are so important. Like when someone cannot break the cycle of behavior that is harmful to them, like when they're in like a self-destructive spiral and you see that and you want to have the conversation with them, like that's a really sensitive conversation. It can be a pivotal conversation that helps them really reorient themselves for better, or it can be one that like really sends them into the depths and really has them spiral even further. And like that's not on your shoulders, like it's not your responsibility by any means. But I think that if you have the wherewithal to have an emotionally intelligent conversation around someone's pattern of behavior, holding a mirror to them about like how that pattern is translating, like look at the destruction that pattern of behavior is creating beyond you or beyond the situation or the setting that you find yourselves in. If you can kind of extrapolate to them and let them see like your behavior isn't just hurting this relationship, it's hurting you, it's hurting your growth, it's hurting your goals, your dreams, your desires. Like this is how your behavior is a hindrance to you. I think that a lot of us need more of the people in our community to like, instead of being dismissive or to kind of pass a blind eye to bad behavior, to just show people like your behavior is putting you on this path. And while that's your path, like that's your journey, I'm not here to like condemn or celebrate anyone's journey. I'm just here to say that if this is the path you're on, like this is the consequences that relates to this relationship, and hold them accountable and hold yourself accountable to that consequence as well. I think we don't ever want to be the kind of people who speak to consequences that we don't follow through on. So don't ever be too harsh. But I think patterns of behavior are just a demonstration of people's wounds, of people's struggles, and of what people are trying to heal from, and people's journeys essentially. And I don't think that any of us meet each other by accident. I think we all meet each other for a reason. And I think that if it is the case that you are having the opportunity to see things from the outside in, and you see someone's pattern of behavior is not helpful to them, and they keep engaging that same behavior thinking that they're going to get a different outcome, then they're blind to how destructive their behavior is, right? And I think that we assume that all of us have a general understanding of like what tools are inadequate, inappropriate, things that like you just can't bring to different levels of your life, and what tools are helpful, are constructive, are going to really propel you in your life. And I think that a lot of us were raised in environments that made us feel like the tools that we're using at any given point in time are the best tools. But if you're in a conversation with someone who thinks that their best tools are really very destructive tools, then it gives you an opportunity to just hold a mirror to them so that they can go back in that conversation and really think about how they show up and if they want to keep showing up that way. And that's just our role. I think our role is just to show people like how you're showing up, and if whether or not you want to keep showing up that way. And that's like the good things that we do, that's the bad things that we do, that's the things that we're doing just for the sake of doing them. Like we want to have conversations around like, is the way that I'm showing up going to be something that hinders me in the future or helps me? When it comes to patterns of behavior that are toxic, having someone hold the mirror to you to show you that this pattern of behavior is toxic, because a lot of the times people don't know, that is good for you. That's only going to do good for you. And I think that if we can hold ourselves to that standard, where if we're going to have a conversation with someone, where if we're going to have a confrontation with someone about their pattern of behavior and how it has impacted us and how it's harmed us and hurt us, then why not try to walk away from that conversation, giving them something to think about that will hopefully help them hold themselves to a higher standard. So that is an important conversation that I think that we all should think about. Like, how do we engage with people when we think about their patterns of behavior, and how do we hold space for the wounded person who is engaging in that behavior, and how do we give them a sense of hope that like they can break free from that cycle? Because a lot of people feel defeated in their own patterns of behavior if they recognize that they're toxic. But it does take one voice of confidence, one person who can be supportive, also like maintaining your own boundaries. Like I think that we can have a supportive conversation, even that conversation is like ending or terminating that relationship or that friendship. I think that we can have constructive conversations even if the outcomes are not what that person expected, right? And I think that that's how we preserve our humanity. I think someone will recognize the kindness that you chose to show in delivering a message that felt like a blow. And I think that if more of us held ourselves accountable to that, like we can deliver hard messages with grace, with empathy, with kindness and compassion, then it gives people the bandwidth to rebound, to be resilient, to bounce back, and to do better. Because when you know better, you do better. In any case, that was a conversation that I wanted to have for today. Some food food for thought for you. Now, if I have piqued your interest, we do host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So I definitely would love you to check those out and see if there's any of them that are interesting to you. We also do have parent-child workshops that we host because we think that it's really important to develop leadership quotient even while children are young. And so we have classes that start up as soon as the child hits 4. And so these are the different workshops that we feel are going to really help build out those leadership competencies. We have 4 core modules focusing on autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept. So if I have piqued your interest, if you want to engage in self-mastery, soft skill live events for you, or engage in the parent-child workshops for you and your family, then check out our website, join our community, make sure you subscribe, not only here, but everywhere else. And if you have a point of view and a way that you feel is going to be beneficial in holding someone accountable to their patterns of behavior while holding space for their humanity, then I want to hear from you. Please provide a comment down below, and I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.